Hello everyone, I welcome you all in the ninth part of our 1000 most expected question series for CUET-PG English Literature exam. So those of you are preparing for CUET-PG 2026 English Literature exam, do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel to get to know all the important questions that have been already asked in different exams like CUET-PG and UGC NET JRF. And as you all know, we have already discussed about the Renaissance period, Restoration period, and the Romantic period. And in this class, we will discuss some of the important essayists of early 19th century and who are the important authors of Victorian poetry. All of them we will discuss in our today's session. So watch this video till the end to get to know all the important questions from 19th century or the Victorian period. And without further delay, let's begin the session. The first question of today's session is who used the pseudonym A Lady? A Lady is a pseudonym which is used by one of the most important early 19th century novelists, and this novelist has written her first work, that is Sense and Sensibility, and in this work he used the pseudonym A Lady, and the lady who used the pseudonym A Lady was Jane Austen. Jane Austen in his 1811 Sense and Sensibility novel. The second question is what was the original title of Pride and Prejudice? Pride and Prejudice is the second novel of the early Victorian novelist Jane Austen, and this novel is published in the year 1813, and the original title of this work is First Impression. First Impression is the original title of Jane Austen's 1813 novel Pride and Prejudice, and the title of this novel is taken from Frances Burney's novel Cecilia. The third question is who said that she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me? The famous quote, she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me, is said by one of the most important characters of Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice, and this quote is said by Fitzwilliam Darcy. Fitzwilliam Darcy said this quote in his response to the female character Elizabeth. The fourth question is the character Fanny Price appears in. The character Fanny Price is one of the most important heroines of Jane Austen's novel, and the character Fanny Price appears in the work Mansfield Park. In the work Mansfield Park, which is published in 1814, the character Fanny Price appears. Fifth question is where does the novel Emma set? This question has already asked in many exams. Jane Austen's novel Emma is situated or set in the place Highbury. In Highbury, Jane Austen's novel Emma is situated. The sixth question is who coined the term unreliable narrator? Unreliable narrator is a term which is introduced in the early 19th century, and the term coined by Wency Booth. It was Wency Booth who used the term unreliable narrator. The seventh question is who wrote the essays of Elia? Essays of Elia is one of the most important essay collections of early 19th century, which is published in the year 1823, and this essay was written by Charles Lamb. Charles Lamb wrote this essay collection, the Essays of Elia. The eighth question is the work Imaginary Conversation was written by. Imaginary Conversation was one of the most important works of 19th century, and this work was written by Walter Savage Landor. Walter Savage Landor from the year 1824 to 29 wrote this work Imaginary Conversation, and it was Benedict Anderson who wrote the work Imaginary Communities, and it was Salman Rushdie who wrote Imaginary Homeland. The ninth question is the essay Characters of Shakespeare is dedicated to. The essay Characters of Shakespeare is one of the most important essay collections by one of the most important essayists of early 19th century, who is William Hazlitt, and this work is dedicated to his beloved friend Charles Lamb. William Hazlitt's essay Characters of Shakespeare is dedicated to Charles Lamb. The 10th question is who wrote the work Life of Napoleon? Life of Napoleon is one of the most important works which is published in the early 19th century, and in this work the author deals with the rise of Napoleon and his fall, and the work was written by William Hazlitt. William Hazlitt wrote this work from the year 1828. The 11th question is Literature of Knowledge and Literature of Power is an essay by Literature of Knowledge and Literature of Power is one of the most important essays in early 19th century, and this essay was published along with some of the other important essays like Murder Considered, one of the fine arts, Knocking at the Gate of Macbeth, and The Confession of an English Opium Eater, and the author was Thomas De Quincey. Thomas De Quincey wrote this essay, The Literature of Knowledge and the Literature of Power. The 12th question is, who was the last Hanoverian monarch? We all know Queen Anne was the last Stuart monarch who ruled from 1702 to 1714, and after the Stuart dynasty, the Hanoverian dynasty came into power, and the last Hanoverian monarch was Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was the last Hanoverian monarch who ruled from 1837 to 1901. The 13th question is the Chartist movement happened from the year. We all know the Chartist movement, one of the most important movements of 19th century, and this movement happened from the year 1838 to 48. The 14th question is the Great Exhibition happened in the year. We all know in the Great Exhibition for the first time the machinery was shown into public, and this Great Exhibition happens in the year 1851. In the year 1851 the Great Exhibition happens in the Crystal Palace in England, and which is organized by Joseph Paxton. The 15th question is who wrote the work Origin of Species? Origin of Species is one of the most important works of scientific discovery of 19th century, and in this work the author talk about theory of evolution, and this work is written by Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin wrote this work in the year 1859, and this work he talks about struggle of existence and theory of evolution. The 16th question is the line. The 16th question is the line death is the end of life, or why should life or labor be, is taken from. This line is one of the most important lines of Victorian poetry, and this line is taken from Lotus Eaters. This line is taken from the Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem The Lotus Eaters, which is the companion poem of his poem Ulysses. Who wrote the work Night Runners of Bengal? Night Runners of Bengal is one of the most important works of colonial period, and this work is written by John Masters. John Masters in the year 1951 wrote this work Night Runners of Bengal. The 18th question is to strive, to seek, to find and not to yield is the line from. This line is one of the most important lines of Alfred Tennyson's, and this line is taken from his poem Ulysses. To strive, to seek, to find and not to yield is a line from Lord Alfred Tennyson's poem Ulysses, and this poem is published in the year 1842. The 19th question is the Elegy in Memoriam was published in which year? The Elegy in Memoriam, which is published in the Victorian time period, and this elegy is dedicated to the friend of Matthew Arnold, who is Arthur Henry Hallam, and this elegy was written in 1815. In the year 1815 the Elegy in Memoriam was published. The 20th question is, what is the subtitle of the work Pauline? Pauline was one of the most important works of early Victorian poets Robert Browning, and this work is published in the year 1833, and the subtitle of this work is A Fragment of a Confession. The 21st question is, the line God's in his heaven all's right with the world is taken from the line God in his heaven and all right in the world is a line taken from the poem Pippa Passes. Pippa Passes was one of the most important poems by Robert Browning, and this line is taken from his work, and this work is published in the year 1841. The 22nd question is, the Ring and the Book is dedicated to. The Ring and the Book is one of the most important work of Robert Browning, which consists of 12 books, and this work is dedicated to his beloved wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Robert Browning's poem The Ring and the Book is dedicated to his wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The 23rd question is, who translated Aeschylus Prometheus Bound? We all know Aeschylus Prometheus Bound is one of the most important works in Greco-Roman period, and this work is translated in the Victorian time period, and the translator of this work was Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Elizabeth Barrett Browning translated Aeschylus Prometheus Bound. The 24th question is, sonnet from the Portuguese is the collection of how many sonnets? We all know from the Elizabethan time period there are many sonnet sequences, and the sonnet sequence sonnets from Portuguese is one of the most important sonnet sequence of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and this sonnet sequence consists of 44 poems. The 25th or the last question is, the poem Scholar Gypsy was published in. The poem Scholar Gypsy is one of the most important poems by the Victorian poet Matthew Arnold, who has also written some of the other important poems like Dover Beach, and this poem, The Scholar Gypsy, was published in the year 1853. And these are some of the important questions from Victorian essays and early Victorian poetry. So those of you are preparing for CUET-PG 2026 English Literature exam, do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel to get to know all the important questions that have been already asked in different exams. Thank you everyone for watching this video.